give people a few minutes. Perfect. Hi everyone. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to log in, and thank you again for joining us on the La Maison de Rouge Periscope. For those of you who are new to us, we broadcast every Monday and we cover a variety of topics around kink, BDSM, alternative sexuality. Of course, we have all these amazing people who come on and, and give us time to interview them so that you guys can get to know them a little. All right, so giving you guys a few minutes. All right, so for those of you who are new and don't know who I am Lucy Sweekill. I'm one half of La Maison de Rouge, and we are here in New York City. This is our Periscope, and today I will be interviewing Katie Rex, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself. But I do want to note, for those of you who are going to have questions, please wait to the end. As many of you know, we do a Q&A at the end of our interview because most of your questions might be actually answered naturally through this interview. So please write them down, ask them at the end. Please ask respectfully, and your questions will be answered. For those of you who will, always happens, ask random stuff, I will be ignoring you. And no, we will not show you our feet. So I'm just going to get that out there right now. All right, so Katie, can you introduce yourself? So introductions, we like your name, your preferred pronoun, and kind of what you do, so job titles as well as any self-identified titles.
So my name's Katie Rex. I am a kink curator, she, her pronouns. I'm a kink curator. I throw femme-focused BDSM nightlife events called Bound.
And you also DJ.
Yes, I'm a DJ. I'm a techno and industrial DJ.
Which we'll get into because I think that's how everything kind of connected, right? Mm-hmm. So so you started Bound, so how long has that been going on?
Bound has only been going on for a little over a year and a half.
Okay.
We started in December 2016.
All right. So in general, if you had to encompass what Bound is in like a, one paragraph description, how would you describe it to people out there?
I think the definition is pretty simple. We are, as I said, a femme-focused event series. So regardless of gender identity, it's celebrating femininity and kind of hedonistic impulses in that, focused on BDSM culture. And we really advocate for exploration in sexuality and through kink. And we are avid sex work supporters.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back so that we can kind of connect the dots to how you got here, because we actually met a few weeks ago and spoke, and I really thought it was really interesting how you kind of evolved and progressed. So the first thing I always like to ask is, so you're definitely kink identified. What was one of your first kink experience? And I break these up in two different ways. Mm-hmm. So sexual kink experience and non-sexual. And from, the sexual is more self-explanatory. The non-sexual, kink or BDSM as non-sexual. So I explain that in a way that, like, when I was super young, I, remember, a big part of, I used to bite people, like, as a little kid, and I used to get in trouble for it, but I used to love how it felt. And then it kind of, now I'm like, oh, I'm a total sadist, it like made sense, but it wasn't sexual for me. So do you have those two sort of memories?
Yes. I was a biter as well, but I'm actually like a slave. So I think whenever I thought of sexuality, or kind of subculture, which I always identified as someone who would be part of subculture and underground.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was finding that, I didn't really know anything about BDSM, but when I thought of gothic and like goth as like a child in the 90s, it was always related to wearing colors and being leashed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually thinking of this today, and it was a memory I think that was really buried because it's so bizarre, but probably the only wholesome thing that I had in high school was I took art classes at a university, and I always like gravitated towards more of like the goth people, whether we actually had any interests in common or not.
Yeah.
And this girl wanted to do a shoot with me, and we were 14, 15, and it was in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, and it was her boyfriend who was like 20 at the time.
Wow.
And they did this like really cheesy like kink scene where I was fully clothed, but it was like him like holding a leash like attached to a collar on me and just all of these really cheesy things, but I was just enamored, and it was like all of these elements that I incorporated into my life, like fashion-wise, and that I thought of with sexuality kind of being theatrically played out for a shoot. So I think that was like a big defining moment for me.
Yeah, definitely. How about sexually? What was kind of your first sexual like experience, like sexual kink experience?
I think sexually it must have been, I guess, tied to these experiences, kind of like outwardly trying to attract that kind of attention, like through wearing colors. Mm-hmm. So I think once I became more sexually active, I just was always like very clear that I wanted a submissive role.
Wow.
Yeah.
So everyone you kind of dated, you were always like, you felt really like naturally submissive.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you kind of try to get them to be more aggressive with you? Or
yeah.
was it or would you just naturally attract people who wanted to be more aggressive, or did you kind of have to like, you know, coax them into being more aggressive?
I think a lot of people who are submissive go through this. I'm sure you've touched on this on Periscope before, but I am very dominant in my everyday life.
Yeah.
And professionally, I'm dominant. I have a pretty big personality, so I have a role reversal in bed where I do demand that I have to demand the submissive role, because I think a lot of people when I date them, they think I'm going to take charge in this certain way when it's the opposite. So I try and like wear signifiers and
to get people to like, I know I'm dominant in this part, but I need you to understand, I need you to take control of this part. I remember us talking about sort of how you grew up and then kind of getting into the kink scene. Can you tell us a little bit of like that progression of like how it all kind of started, right? So you said that when you were younger, you were kind of always interested in like sort of that gothic look and feel. So how did that progress into going from that into, you know, more kink and more BDSM, and then, you know, that what was that like?
I was always into like goth nightlife scenes, and that goes very hand in hand with the like kink party culture. So through I began going to like kink parties, and then I played slave girl at a dungeon, and we did like lots of big fetish events that were private but a little more public. And I just always professionally wanted to immerse myself in kink. So just for anyone who wants to see my feet, I worked at a foot fetish spot for a night and never got asked back because mine are so ugly. But yeah, I just always tried to put myself in that position, and obviously music played a big part in that. So I was always into music made by machines, which, you know, goth, EBM, industrial. And then kind of as Bloghouse started, I moved away from kink and music being hand in hand and went into like a nightclub, nightlife direction, and always had like these, it turned into a separate life that was kink and then nightlife.
Yeah. And then, so where did you grow up again?
I grew up in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And that's where you kind of got into the kink scene, was there.
Mm-hmm.
And always as a submissive?
Yes.
And did you play with both men and women? Who, you know, what were the type of people you played with?
Yeah, both men and women. My best friend when I was 19 when I started this, so my best friend at the time was a dominatrix. So we would like put on little shows and stuff at events.
So she would top you as a performance.
Yes.
So would you identify as a switch at all, or mostly as a submissive?
I think in my personal life, I can be a switch because at this point, like relationship-wise, I don't need to play that role 24 hours a day anymore. I feel like I capped off at a certain point. But yeah, I don't like to play really unless I get to play the role that I want.
Yeah.
Which is a submissive.
Interesting. So then you got into the kink scene and the music scene, but they started to separate, right?
Yes.
And then you moved to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And were they still separate when you were in New York?
Yeah, in Philly it became really, really separate. Yeah. So I just had a whole DJ career that I was getting into, and techno, and I was doing femme-focused events, but I found no place for, outside of like queerness, like I found no place for sexuality in the music scene.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to New York, I kind of found that there were a handful of people going to like techno events, wearing collars and leashes and kind of bringing floggers, and people definitely didn't take them seriously. But I saw this and I got an opportunity to do an event at a club at Tilt in Bushwick, and I essentially said I wouldn't do something unless they let me do whatever I wanted. Mm-hmm. And that's when Bound came about. So one of these people who was showing up to events with a flogger was my dom at Bound, or our dom, Bitch Fest. And she's a fetish wear designer, genderless fetish wear. Mm-hmm. And I just invited her to come dom, and we could like kind of see how it would play out. And something I learned, for anyone watching interested in creating spaces for your niche interests, is if you like it, there's 1,000 other people who like it.
Definitely.
So we ended up kind of building this community and culture of our niche interest of loving techno and BDSM. And that's where we are.
That's awesome. I like how that it came very organically through your own evolution
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to do something you cared about compared to trying to cater to something, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to, I feel a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions on submission. And, when we've brought male submissives on, there's always just like these crazy questions that I get asked. And I get it because it seems so foreign. Yet somehow when female submissives come on, it's a little different. Like for some people, they think it's more obvious, which is weird. Which is weird to me. I get it, but it's still weird. So I kind of want to ask you about like your submission, your identity as someone who prefers to be submissive. Like, do you feel this was something that came easy for you? Like, did you, as you kind of grew up and you start connecting with your sexuality and you start, experimenting and everything like that, when you're younger, was this something that was a challenge, or was it something that you kind of already knew, or how did that look like for you?
I think that it was just ever present, and I can't say it was much of a challenge for me. I think when I started so young that this is all I know at this point, and I really sought out these communities to be a part of, and people who were guiding me. So,
do you feel like you had a really good support network? Was your family structure very supportive about you kind of searching out these alternative like communities, or was it just like, because I find that that's not really easy,
Yeah.
It's like there's something that happens that kind of drives people to seek out alternative communities, whether they feel, distance from, growing up. And like for me, I got into like goth music and alternative music because I was like the only Asian person in this all-white community, and I was different already.
mm-hmm.
So I just kind of was like, well, I'm never going to fit in. I might as well do my own thing, right? And started getting into things I was into, so it didn't really matter that I was the weirdo
Mm-hmm.
or the freak because I was already,
Right.
So what, how, or what, was there something that drove that, or was it the fact that you just had a really supportive network around you?
I definitely, I guess, I feel like I'm in therapy. When I was, like in middle school, I really tried to fit in.
Yeah.
Really was not good at that. And was just like very interested in art, and I just didn't identify with anyone I was around. So I, at one point, had my fuck it moment and kind of just did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Much like what you did. But as far as my family goes, they're very reserved people.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big adjustment period for my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So I did my freshman year of college in New York, and they came to visit me in December.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe it was like October, like a month after me being here, and I went from like dyed black hair to like pink and blue hair and 4 lip piercings and a septum ring. So, like, it was just really fast, and it was like very clear. It wasn't a phase. It was like I finally was able to be myself.
Yeah.
And now, I go home to Philly sometimes and like laundry gets done.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's like, "What's up with all this bondage stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's fashion."
Are you like that out to them? Do they follow you on social media?
They don't follow me. They're very old, so they're not really online. But it would take a Google search.
Yeah.
But it's like my accessories. I don't really own any other clothing that would like read otherwise.
Yeah. And
So
that's funny because I definitely did all the hair colors.
Mm-hmm.
Was, you know, before I have the long black hair, I did every hair color. And my mother would be like, "You need to walk 30 feet behind me."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then so, you know, you kind of did the like went into alternative communities and felt very kind of just connected naturally
Mm-hmm.
in seeking those things, which is very self-aware,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like to just kind of naturally find yourself in that place. Did you always know that you wanted to come to New York?
I think when I was younger, it seemed very attractive.
Yeah.
Because I was still like being fed an older version of New York that supported artists living here.
Yeah.
Financially and everything. But at this point, I moved here kind of like as a career stepping stone.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think I've been here for 4 years, and I don't think I intended to stay this long or to find what I found in community.
Yeah.
But
so where do you see Bound going? Since it's new, very new, and it kind of sort of happened organically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes, you know, these things happen and you're like, wow, I actually hit on something that's really meaningful. Where do you see it going? What does that look like for you?
So we are at a larger venue now for these like big techno parties, but like last Sunday we had a Club Looks only clothing swap where everyone brought some pretty amazing, outrageous, and like also like very standard like Adidas tracksuit type Club Looks. And just like connecting with communities, and I still have to go to Beacon's Closet, but I like picked through everything, and I can take those leftover clothes and try and get some money for them, and we're donating all the money to RICE's, the immigration fund.
Awesome.
So just kind of using this platform to help people, whether it's as a community, like bringing people together, or kind of allocating money in other places. And as that grows, just something with Bound that I really like hope we can do is normalize sex work and like alternative sexualities.
Yeah.
So we can decriminalize sex.
Yeah.
And anything that Bound can do to be a part of that, because we're legal. We're a legal party. Everything we do is legal. Yeah. And if we can just kind of promote sexuality being a safe, healthy, like legal thing, then that I would just like to do that the rest of my life.
So Bound seems to be very like, you know, I haven't been to an event yet. We'll talk about your upcoming event as well. But, you know, you guys were featured in Vogue. There was an article out. It seems like Bound attracts a lot of a much younger crowd, which in a lot of kink and BDSM, there's definitely this separation, right? There's this like old guard group and people who have been doing kink and BDSM for a very long time. And then there's like all these new sort of generations getting into it. And there has been a lot of talk about how that's going to look, right? Because, you know, kink and BDSM at one point used to have all these sort of like rules and protocols, and now that's shifted a lot, and you have a lot of, you know, intersectional, like everything, right? That all these things are much more fluid, and you have this like younger crowd, and I notice Bound attracts this much younger crowd. What, you know, like, is that something that you meant to do, or is it just because, you know, that is it just because of the music that's really attracting the younger crowd as well?
Yeah, it was completely intentional. In the kink communities I've been in since I was 19, I've been in kink communities for longer, but professionally since I was 19, I did not feel welcome. As a young queer woman, I just felt like I wasn't given like all the opportunities to explore, and there was like a lot of moments where people just wanted me to, I guess people wanted to tell me about how much more experience they had. And I don't like the gatekeeper mentality of the older kink communities that I've been a part of. Obviously, this is a generalization, but it isn't. It's very specific to my experience. But at the end of the day, like, I didn't want to go to any more parties or community events that were going to hold me back and alienate me.
Did you feel a lot of the parties were very like less queer, more heterosexual, cisgendered, you know? Was that the feeling you were getting from a lot of the parties you went to?
Yes. Like, I have no interest in being anyone's unicorn. At least at this point in my life, and like when I was younger, I just felt like I was going to a lot of events, like when I went for fun, and I was being approached by cis men and couples.
Yeah.
And that's just not how I identify, or at this point, how really any of my friends identify.
Yeah.
And I didn't find there was really any space for trans people. I saw a lot of cross-dressing, but not, which I think is like amazing, but I didn't see the life that I live represented.
Yeah, because I feel like that's what you created with Bound. Bound has definitely this new generation. It's much younger. It's very fluid. It seemed like there was just like, from a lot of the photos and all of that it was very different than, you know, a lot of the current kind of kink-oriented parties that are around, which I really loved. You know, something that connected with a different generation, because it's different, right? And things have to evolve. I think some of the classic parties are great, but then there's also a lot of these events that need to update, and, you know, I think Bound is a very good version of that. So you guys have been hosting, you know, clubs, you know, clothing swaps. You have an upcoming event, which we'll talk about. Do you see Bound kind of getting into other arenas that, you know, are you guys trying to do other things with Bound?
Yeah, I just started hosting a anime and lingerie thing at my apartment.
That's cool.
So inviting like people from all different industries to kind of just like hang out and chat, and then like watch a movie and connect in a space that isn't centered around substance enhancers or experience enhancers.
Yeah.
I'm sober, so it's like important for me to connect in these ways. So I think we'll like kind of take that and broaden the scope of it and make it a bigger production to some capacity. Like that's kind of the next thing. We're also looking into starting a fetish fashion week.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so hopefully, like, kind of highlighting fetish wear designers from across the globe that are a little more high end. So that's been in the works. So hopefully next year in the fall we'll have that sorted.
That sounds awesome. Fetish Fashion Week. I can just imagine that.
Yeah. I'll keep you posted.
So I kind of want to go back to you and your kind of sexual evolution, because a big part of what we do in our Periscope is kind of kind of talk about people's personal journeys, right? And for those out there who struggle with their own journey and their own sex and their own sexuality and their own kink and everything. So a big part of it is just kind of, we always talk about communicating, you know, your likes, your dislikes, your boundaries, all of that, because most people are so afraid to talk about those things. So could you, like, what, as a submissive, what are your interests? What do you like? What do you enjoy?
I'm mostly into full submission. So if I find a master, which is very hard, so that's not something that happens frequently, or I have had like 2 masters in 10 years, so I don't want anyone watching to think that it's that easy, but I sign full submission contracts.
Cool.
Yeah. And they have a like start date and end date, and sometimes they've been 2 weeks long or 24 hours long, kind of to test the waters. And the longest I've done it is for 8 months.
Yeah.
Which is insane. But yeah, I'm into just like full submission.
Do you have limits in that?
No, just like, I think the limits is, well, there are limits. It's nothing, it can't affect me professionally or financially.
Yeah.
Or my relationship with my family and friends. And no long-term internal health issues.
Some of the good limits to have.
Right.
You're like, no death.
Right. Well, I mean, you really have to trust this person.
Yeah, like, I think that's a hard thing that, you know, I think you bring up a really great point of you saying that even yourself as someone who's looking for dominant, that it's not easy for you because you have to feel connected to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people think that, oh, well, I want to be your slave, should automatically work out for them. And it doesn't work that way, you know, because it goes on both sides. I, as a dominant, I'm not looking to enslave all these people,
right?
Especially if I don't know you. And to be a good slave to someone who it really means something to, like yourself, it's not that easy to find a dominant, you know. And it's good that you're discerning about it instead of being like, I'll just submit to anyone. You know?
Right. Well, there's like a lot of risk.
Yeah.
When you put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Obviously, a contract is not legal.
Yeah.
But it's I guess as a slave, it's like a big psychological trip.
Yeah.
So having a contract is signing a contract is the most satisfying part of any of it for me. Like handing over that my basic human rights and like committing to that servitude.
Has there been, like, during these times that you have had that, you said you've had to, has there been something that ever, you know, what were some of the best and what were some of the worst moments, I guess?
I would say the best moment, like, definitely for me is like signing a contract, which is another reason why sometimes I'll do it on like a shorter time frame, because then I get that experience more frequently. But in the longest term one that I did, my master had some psychological issues he had to deal with in that time that weren't expected. And that's really difficult because, you know, like, we had to end a contract early because that person was like not able to perform in a safe way. And being that you have, like, for me, like, there is that much responsibility where I have to like look out and be like, this isn't
good for you.
Good for anybody at that point. So I think being a contractually bound slave, like, there's a lot of, it seems like maybe to some, like, I'm just really relinquishing everything and someone else is in control of me, but there's a huge responsibility on my part.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I like that you understand that, like, you know, a submissive still has responsibility, and if something, like, sometimes the dominant, if something has happened, is not actually safe to be the one in control, and you have to, like, say, you know what, I know I signed this thing, but, like, here is all these things that don't make it healthy anymore. You know? Do you have any limits, like, when you play, or what, you know, things that, like, beyond the basic limits, do you have any things that are just like, not into that?
I'm definitely not into scat.
I felt like that was going to be the one you were going to say.
Definitely not into scat. I can do, like, with I think any other body fluid unless I'm, like, missing something. But, I think, like, scat is my only limit. Not ass play, but scat, just like that.
Would you say you like pain?
Yes.
Do you have a high tolerance? I find women have a higher tolerance. Think about those men out there. Women have a better tolerance with pain. Stop being a little brat. Calling your safe words way before it even hurts. Why? So before we get to, like, the Q&A, tell us about this upcoming event with Bound.
Yay. Bound is on Friday or Saturday. Wow. I think Saturday, September 22nd at Elsewhere in Brooklyn. It's off the Jefferson L. It's 2 rooms. The main room is a big room electro event. So we have DJ Stingray headlining, Volvox, Zeno and Oaklander, which is live electronic, and Haruka is opening. And then in Zone 1, which is the more intimate space, is definitely the heart and soul of Bound. So we have Bitch Fist, who, as I mentioned before, is a fetish wear designer and dominatrix, and V, who is an amazing dominatrix who brings electro play equipment.
Awesome.
and then they have a whole team surrounding them that play with people. There's no photos in Zone 1, and that's kind of an anything goes space within the realm of consent.
Is there any parameters about people going? Is there any advice about people going?
I would definitely invest in some fetish wear. If you don't have any and can't afford it, I would wear black or nothing.
Go with the nothing.
Right. For anyone with any concerns, because we did move from a small space that had a really strict door policy to this kind of like open format venue. The last Bound was the first night since Elsewhere has been open that not one person was removed from the venue. So we definitely keep it cool. We have 3 monitors in Zone 1 that have flyers to kind of hand out to any people that might look confused or out of place or voyeuristic.
Yeah.
And these people also serve as someone that attendee can go to if they see anyone acting inappropriately or if anyone's kind of creeping them out.
Yeah.
They will be removed immediately.
And you would say that Bound is definitely like, there's no like age restriction, but it is something that's geared more towards a younger crowd due to the music and through, just the atmosphere and the culture of the party, right?
I would say that, Bound is definitely open to everyone. I think age-wise, it was more of a reaction.
Yeah.
But not necessarily like now it's a symptom.
Yeah.
So there is like absolutely no age restriction, but I think just with the open-mindedness that people have been coming with, it does seem to be a younger crowd, younger being like 35 and under, but we obviously have many attendees that are older than that and are welcome.
Yeah. Cool. For those of you who have any questions, you're welcome to ask them while I kind of ask one more question. So you guys can ask them if you have any. We usually have this little fun question that we ask about your vices and virtues. And this is something we took from our friend Kristen from the Sluttis. But could you name some of your vices and virtues?
My vices, just generally.
Yeah, generally. You can do it with, it can be in any form. You can define it, how you would like to define it.
Well, I guess since I don't drink anymore, I do have a glass of champagne every so often. That is definitely a vice of mine.
Moderation.
Yeah. Virtues. What do you mean necessarily by virtues?
It's what you define it as. Like, I would say my virtue is I'm definitely a family-oriented person in the sense that it's my chosen family, so I'm very big about getting groups of people together. I find that to be a virtue of mine. I think as a Dom, my virtue is a ability to kind of get people to not feel so ashamed of themselves and feel very comfortable in their own skin. So you can define your virtues.
Got you. I would say my virtues are definitely community building at this point, and kind of diverting what has been known as a scene in the past, and building a lot of trust and high expectation in fetish community and music community.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. I definitely think that's your virtue. Somebody asked something about a sample contract. So this is really funny because I've written contracts before too. I'm not one for like written contracts. Some people really love them. Do you use something that you like, or is it usually something that your dominant puts together?
I take a lot of responsibility in making my own contract and like having it edited by the master, in the same way that I believe all subs and submissives should have their own toys and equipment. But that might just be me.
I like that.
Yeah. Like, if you want it done, you gotta own it. And then, but I guess, so I do my own contract writing. I also, like, am studying for the LSAT, so, like, I really want to be a lawyer one day.
Yeah.
So that's fun for me. But if you are someone who's curious about contracts, there's some website where, like, you fill in the blanks I've seen. I don't know what it's called, but you could just Google it. That's how I found it. And then there's a book that's, like, the master slave contract book, and you like fill in the blanks, and it's really thick, and you can, like, I think mail it into them, and they'll like print it out for you
and make one for you.
Yeah. I've seen it at Passionelle, which is a store in Philadelphia, as clothing and kink store.
Someone asked, what are your favorite fetish designers?
For leather, I love Fleet Ilya. I think it's the highest quality. I also will stand for Zana Bain forever because she really like did it. I think for a lot of people, like kind of pushed them out there. For latex, I love Vex Latex. They're based out of California, like Southern California. Those are my favorites.
Cool. Is there any small designers in the New York area that you like?
Yeah, I definitely, obviously Bitch Fist, who, I don't mean to be redundant, but everything is handmade by her. And oh my god, I love Creepy Yeha.
Yeah.
I know that she does everything, just her and her partner. So it's just the two of them. I don't know if they're still in New York, but they definitely were New York based for a long time.
Yeah, I think they are too.
Yeah.
I don't know if this will work for you, and I can answer this too. Are chastity devices common for female submissives? Have you ever had a female chastity device?
No, I haven't used that.
Yeah.
So.
There are female chastity devices that come in as chastity belts that can be fully locked. I've seen them made for men as well. You know, I've never actually used them on women because I think a lot of it most people prefer to make women orgasm as much as possible, while it's better to deny men. At least in my opinion. But have you ever been orgasm controlled in that sense, like required to not masturbate, not?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, as part of like a contract.
Yes.
Yeah.
My last master would like text me when it was time.
Yeah.
and I couldn't pleasure myself unless I had permission.
Yeah. Well, there you go, you guys.
There you go.
Can you give us all the ways people can find your stuff, Bound's information, your information, any, social media websites, things like that?
So Bound has a pretty informative website. It's boundnyc.com. If you want to get in touch with us about any events or booking requests, you can go to our contact section and send a message through there. It's checked multiple times a day. We have an Instagram at bound_NYC. We're also on Facebook if you want to like us there. My personal Instagram is at katierex.digital. And I have a Facebook page as well. Both of those are very music centered and on the techno realm of things. So if you're looking for naughty fetish stuff, just follow the Bound pages.
And then the next event is September 22nd, right?
September 22nd.
And where is
yes.
that located again?
It's at Elsewhere, which is 599 Johnson Avenue.
Is there a door cost, a ticket cost?
Yes, tickets are on sale now. You can most easily find it through our Instagram. The link is in the bio, but you can find it on Resident Advisor. Yeah.
How much are the tickets right now? Or will
so
they vary?
Yeah, there's tiers. I think right now we still have some second tier tickets left. The first tier is sold out, and then so the second tier of tickets is $20 with like a $5 surcharge, so $25, and then up from that it'll be about like $30 total.
Okay.
So
cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining in. Thank you, Katie, for being on our Periscope. I'm looking forward to actually checking out Bound next month. Yeah, because it's August now, right? Next month. So thank you guys again for joining us. Next week, we will actually have Liara, which we'll be posting, and many of you guys know Liara is a porn producer, as well as sex worker and sex work activist. So definitely check out our interview next week as well. So thank you guys again and have a great week. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.